to come in. And these students have been coordinated by Profesora Griselda Lucchesi. Griselda es profesora de inglés graduada en este instituto. Se desempeña en el nivel secundario desde el año 2006 y en el nivel terciario desde el año 2010. Actualmente cursa la licenciatura en lengua inglesa en la Universidad Tecnológica Nacional. En el año 2015 colaboró como capacitadora docente en el dictado del curso La producción del conocimiento y las modalidades del saber en el siglo XXI y en el curso de enseñanza de inglés en alumnos integrados y adultos en la escuela primaria, ambos semipresenciales y en el marco del Plan Nacional de Formación Permanente. Okay.
I'm today here with a group of students from, can you hear me? Yes, because I think my voice is loud enough. Yes, why are you laughing? How do you know? I'm here with a group of students from 6th year, San Pablo School. There I teach literature. In fact, our subject in 6th year has the purpose of connecting these students with fiction. Because, as you know, San Pablo is a bilingual school. They have 4 hours English every single day from kindergarten onwards, but they do all the language certificates that you can imagine and some others, right? And then they have subjects in English. And so something that they are not sure, they don't have the opportunities to enjoy literature. Looking for some methodology that afforded real communication as readers with the text, I came across literary circles. So they work in groups. At present I've got 4 groups doing 4 different things. They have roles within each group, and everything that they collect in their capacity, in that role, they bring to the group to promote discussions. In this way we are negotiating meanings all the time, and they are behaving like real readers, rather than evaluating, assessing, criticizing literature. Those roles cover from the use of the words to the use of images. So students can express their interpretation in different ways. By the end of the process, we have enough information, background information, because that is one of the roles. As regards the author, the historical period, the geography, if that is the case, it's information that is valuable for the interpretation of the story. We have analyzed the use of certain words and the meanings and the purpose of the author has to use those words in that context. We analyze different topics because as readers we pay attention to different things, and a lot of work has been done in terms of inference and in terms of meanings. So if they were to write a paper, by the end of the process we have all the information that we need for a paper. We have discussed several different topics, and there has been some research into each of those topics. Now these students worked with 2 theories. They added something else. One of the group works with a theory from psychology, affect theory, and they applied the theory to the interpretation of the story, and the other group worked with the same story this time. They read a little bit about visual literacy, about the grammar of visual design, and then they drew part of the story and interpreted the story from the point of view of what they tried to convey through, with that drawing. So, well, okay. Juan, Maria, Cata, no, my brother is, I call her Pancha, but she is Francisca, sorry, and Lucia. Okay.
We're going to start a presentation about Visiting Time, a story by Eva Burns. No. Well, first
Can you hear? So, yeah.
we're going to begin with an introduction about the author. After that, we're going to describe the main characters, both physically and psychologically. After that, we're going to explain the plot of the story, then a theory for the analysis, and at the end, the analysis of the story. Well, Emma Brooks is the author of this story, and she's a journalist. The first story was published in 2004, and she went to get material for a story about a man whose son had murdered. This is how Visiting Time was originated. The main characters of the story are John Garrison, that is the son. He has been murdered by Luke Slater, that is the criminal. His father is the narrator of the story, and he will tell us about all the traumas he went through, and specifically his latest and most important trauma, his son murder. Well, their father is very tall, and he walks on a slab because he has broken his leg in an accident. And he's a religious man. He's resilient. This means that he is able to cope with all the hardships he went through. He's upset, and he's obsessed and determined to take revenge on his son. He plans to kill Luke Slater to take revenge on his son's murder. This makes him a really violent man. The murderer, Luke Slater, hides behind his difficult life to justify his actions. He tries to get rid of some of the guilt by saying that he has gone through tough time too. His attitude is characterized in two ways. He victimizes himself. For example, there's a quotation in the story that says, "It did everything it could to sound like a bleeding, little, poor type of character. Bad childhood, bad home." This is said by the narrator, Mr. Garrison. And he's also acting in an arrogant way. Mr. Garrison says in the story, the confidence he had was ridiculous.
Well, this story is about the murder of John Garrison, that it was done by Luke Slater, and during the trial of this crime, the father of John Garrison plans to kill the murderer. When Luke Slater is sent to prison, Mr. Garrison starts visiting regularly the prison in order to contact him. And after 5 years, he gets the permission to come to meet him, and during this conversation, Mr. Garrison changes his mind about killing him and plays with his mind, so Slater was morally dead. And this is because he will never forget about the death of John Garrison.
Now we have heard the plot. I'm going to talk about the affect reader theory by Tomkins. Tomkins was a psychologist. To understand a little bit more about the theory, we must know the four terms: affect, feeling, emotion, and script. Affects are the biological response to the variant of the neural firing that underlies our emotions. They are expressed in the body, for example, gestures in the face. Then is the feeling, that is the awareness of an affect that is coming. Then this emotion, that the emotion is the addition of feeling and memory, once we have of a prior event. And then are the scripts, that the scripts are kind of rules to control your body of previous affect. Now, the theory, Tomkins' theory, was based to understand every human reaction, emotion, and personality. He had observed babies, and he chose babies because babies are in a part of the human life where each emotion and reaction is very primitive and easy to understand. Babies are easy to understand because they have no memory, and with no memory you can connect with feeling, and without feeling you can get to the emotion. So it's pure affect. Then there are different stimulus that can be inside or outside the body. For example, you're close to a snake, the stimulus will be the snake. and affects can be combined.
Well, as Juan said, Tompkins studied babies and he claimed the existence of 9 innate defects everyone has when it is born and all along its life. The first one is distress, which babies show as it is their first response when they are born. They start crying, and this is a cry of distress, which shows something is not going well and is caused by a very high level of neural firing and stimulus. When this effect is combined with the memory of prior similar feelings, it results in the emotion of anguish. And the other effects go through a similar process. Interest is the effect and results in emotion of excitement. Enjoyment results in joy. Surprise results in startle. Anger results in the emotion of rage, which can also be seen in the story. We identify a link between this emotion and the story, as Mr. Garrison is full of rage when he visits Lux later in prison. He is strongly determined to kill his own murderer. The next one is fear, which results in terror. The next one is shame, which results in humiliation, which we also saw in the story by the murderer, who cannot look the father of the person he has killed in the eyes. The next one is disgust, and the last one is the smell, which we will explain in the following part of the presentation.
Now I'm going to talk about the balance. I have talked about the script that were rules to control the body. That control of the body is the balance. Now, Lux later had a deep sense of insecurity and personality disorder. We analyze that through the story and we see all the things, all the disorders he had. Now, how can he protect himself of those disorders? He showed an arrogant attitude. For example, in this quotation, it says, push back in his chair, one leg on its knee, small and cocky-like, narrow shoulder, and smirking while waiting. That is the part when he's talking with the father in prison, and he knows he's talking to the man who had lost his child, but he is arrogant and he doesn't care anything about what is happening and the situation. Now, in one part of the meeting, the father tells about how he and his wife felt and how they imagined Sean sending letters to him from Australia. They think his son is in bed, but he's far away from them. At that moment, everything falls apart. The balance is broken. Now, he had the chance from seeing the other as a person and not as an object, because during the story he sees Mr. Garrison as an object and he calls him he, not he. One quotation that the balance has broken is that he feels with the hem of his shirt. He's touching like a child who has made something wrong. Now, once the balance is broken, it appears the effect of humiliation. He puts in a defensive way to protect himself from the situation, because he can't resist the situation. In one way he shows in the body the humiliation is little eye contact. For example, when it says he shifts his eyes and his eyes flip about. This means that he's looking to all the room, but never to the father. For the last slide I'm going to talk about is the smell. I left the smell for the last slide because I think this effect goes through the beginning to the end of the story. The smell is a biological response of repulsion that can be ingested. Now, Lux later and the father share this emotion, this effect of the smell in a particular way. For example, the father had previous traumas and he had passed many hardships on his life. For example, at the beginning of the story, you can read that he had lost his son, a friend that was eaten by a lion. And recently he had lost his son. Luke later, on the other side, he has this feeling of guilt about his action that was murdering his son. Now, what the thing they can ingest, and I think no human being can ingest in life, is death. That's why they are connected, because death is the only thing they can ingest along the story.
We also analyze the story from the visual social semiotics, and this is how the different point of views also affect the meaning of what you want to represent. When you are drawing something or when you are producing an image, you have to take into account the different angles. For example, this is the vertical angle, which represents symbolic power. When you put someone above the other people, you mean that he has more power than the others. Then this is high level. This is commonly used in political campaigns, that they want you to show that you are like them, and they want you to vote them, for example, in this case. Then this is the horizontal angle. It represents symbolic involvement, but it's not a total involvement, because you can see that only one person in the group is looking at you, and this means that you are not totally involved. Then this is the frontality, and this does represent maximum involvement, because there is only one person in the picture and he's looking directly at you. And this is the last one. This is from the side, that represents that the viewer remains on the sideline, because you can see that you are at the same level as them, but they are not looking at you, so you are not with them.
Well, and in all these semiotic resources, an angle doesn't have only one meaning, because this depends on the producer's aim and the viewer's interpretation. And the symbolic relations are not real relations, because in most of the cases, all the photographs, for example, they are staged, they are not natural. We say that visual social semiotics is functionalist, because it sees each resource, for example, the angles that she explained, as having been developed for specific work. Each part of an image has a specific meaning. And there are three metafunctions, depending on what the image represents. Representational metafunction creates representation of the world or part of the world. Interactive metafunction creates interactions between the producers and the viewers. And compositional metafunction brings together both representation and interaction. But now I'm going to talk about representational meaning. There is something called spatial syntax that refers to where in the image each thing is located, and whether they are connected to lines or visual lines of color, shape, etc. And these are known as vectors. There are two types of visual syntactic patterns: narrative representations and conceptual patterns. Narrative representations relate the participants with what they are doing with their actions, and conceptual patterns represent participants in terms of their essences rather than their actions. Well, and in the narrative structures, there's always a presence of a vector. But a vector is a line that is often diagonal that connects two participants' motor. It can be unidirectional or bidirectional. And the goals are the participants at whom the vector is directed. For example, here we have a case of bidirectional vector that this can be seen first in the eye contact that they have there, and in the hand in the leg. And this is unidirectional because Wally is looking at an object. They don't have interaction. And in the conceptual structures, here does not contain any vectors, because they define, analyze, or classify people, places, or things. And here we can see